Welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, joined as always by my co-host Ben Anderson, and today we also have our Big Ten expert from the CBB Review site, Ethan Carbone, on to join us, and we are going to be doing the second part of our six-part series where we recap the transfer portal, the winners, the losers, and some of the best players that transferred into each conference. And like I said, today we are going to do the Big Ten, and we'll get into each of our winners, each of our losers are all Big Ten transfer team. Before we get to that, I feel like there's one main storyline regarding the Big Ten and the transfer portal. And I'll throw it to you, Ben, first. Hunter Dickinson out of the Big Ten. He is going to the Big 12, going from Michigan to Kansas. That I feel like it just must be talked about first. So, Ben, I want you to just tell us your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I think that he is the best player in the transfer portal right now. I think there is an argument that he's not the most impactful player in the transfer portal. I think Max Abmas has an argument there when he goes to Texas, but this is an All-American, right? He went to the Elite Eight, led a 1 seed to the Elite Eight his freshman year. Obviously, it hasn't gone as planned these past 2 years, but this is still a talent that will thrive anywhere in the country at the college level. And it is a shame for the Big Ten that, you lose a player of the caliber as Dickinson.
Ethan, go ahead.
So I feel like, Ben, you said perfectly. He's probably the best overall player that we've seen in the portal this year. Obviously, you can make the argument for Max Abmas, but Dickinson's coming off of a 3-year stretch where he was an All-American, led Michigan to the Elite Eight, and overall was just a dominant player for 3 years in one of the hardest conferences to be a big man in. And now he's leaving for arguably an easier conference to play the big man in. But he's in a perfect situation now. He is a better coach. And it's definitely interesting to see how the portal is actually affecting. As we see it in women's basketball, the super team at LSU makes you think if it could be possible already with men's.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at the Big Ten otherwise. I know Ben was actually talking about this off air before the podcast. It's so underwhelming, the players that they got. But also, outside of Hunter Dickinson, it's not like they had any real top 10 player losses, would you say? So I feel like we're going to declare our winners and losers, but overall, there's a lot of net around neutrals, a lot of teams that, gained needs that lost like semi-significant players. But I feel like we did the ACC first. They were pretty clear who did well, who did not do well. Do you agree that it was a little bit harder to determine that in the Big Ten?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Ethan off air, and I actually think that his winner and loser should be switched. So we'll get more into that when we talk. But really, there's a lot of disagreement. I think there's a healthy disagreement on who the winners and who the losers are. But really, it's basically because they're all around the mean.
All right, so let's get into it. My winner in the Big Ten regarding the transfer portal, I'm going to go with Indiana. I think this is the obvious choice that I did steal from both of you. So we're going to talk about, first off, who they gained, and Khalil Ware from Oregon, arguably the most significant Big Ten transaction outside of Dickinson. He averaged just 13 minutes per game as a freshman, but at 7 foot, his pure talent, his high school production, what he was as a recruit, and the sparks that he did show in his freshman year. I mean, look, not every top 100 recruit, not every top recruit in general bursts onto the scene and becomes a lottery pick in their first year. But Ware from Oregon, now going to Indiana, that is absolutely huge. And they did a lot more with their front court as well. They got Anthony Walker from Miami. He spent 4 years there. Minutes and productions have actually declined since his sophomore season, which is a strange trend. But Miami, since his sophomore season, has become a really, really good team with back-to-back Elite Eight runs, one of them going to the Final Four. I feel like he has a skill set and is really just better designed for this Indiana system compared to Miami. And that's why I think it's a win-win situation for Anthony Walker and for Indiana. And then there's Peyton Sparks from Ball State, a different kind of transfer than the first two I talked about. Why? Because I feel like he's more of the high floor, low ceiling kind of addition. He has the production behind him. He had 13 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game in back-to-back seasons in his first two at Ball State. But he's likely not going to be a superstar. We know he could already produce at the Division I level. He's a back-to-the-basket big, also a little bit different from Ware. So Indiana really added to their front court a little bit of diversity in players too, which is huge, especially considering that they're losing Trace Jackson-Davis. And that is – he could have won I guess probably second in line for the National Player of the Year, definitely behind Edey. But if you want to put heavy weight on what happened in the NCAA tournament, I guess you could make that argument. Either way, I mean, the subtractions, Jordan Geronimo, he struggled for playing time. He's off to Maryland. Tamar Bates had a few good games. He had 14 in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but that's not a huge loss. He's off to Missouri. And they also had Logan Duncombe. He also struggled for playing time. He's off to Xavier. I think overall, this is the clear winner in the transfer portal. That's got to be Indiana. But Ethan, you're up next. So tell us who your transfer portal winner was in the Big Ten.
So I went with an interesting choice because this is a team that realistically hasn't deserved much attention over the past however many years. It's been now 4 seasons with Fred Hoiberg. But Nebraska, coming off their best season under Hoiberg at 16-16, were just two wins under 500 in conference. And they had the best record since Tim Miles' final season. This is still a team that has yet to win an NCAA tournament game in their long history. So they're adding some talent. They lost some seniors. Realistically, they didn't lose too many players that matter a whole lot to their scoring or defense. Quirин McPherson went to Northern Illinois. Oleg Kojenets went to Wyoming. And then Denim Dawson went to Tennessee State. However, they bring in Bryce Williams, a 13-point scorer from Charlotte, Josiah Alec from New Mexico, Aaron Eulis from in-conference rival Iowa, who is a very solid defensive player and will fight for rebounds as a mixture of guard and forward for them, and then Rink Mast from Bradley, who was the first-team all-conference in Missouri Valley, will be able to slot right in at either the 4 or 5 for him, can shoot the 3. Overall, Nebraska's additions, they should finish around where they did this year, if not better, just because they're finally coping as a team together. They're finally playing Big Ten basketball, and they're getting closer and closer to making the tournament yet again.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick. And Ethan, I know you said this before, but it's hard to judge Nebraska and other teams of that nature because of the situation that they find themselves in. Do you judge them equally as with Indiana, or is it more of a, okay, for Nebraska, is this a really good transfer portal class? You know what I'm saying? Right? Do you think that had something to do with how you decided that, Ethan?
I think that's honestly exactly how I decided it, just because they're bringing in some very key players from mid-majors, and then you're bringing in an interconference transfer. For Nebraska, this is a win. For the whole Big Ten, it's hovering up there. As you see right there, obviously not all these rankings are my personal, but number 27 ranked transfer class, they're doing better than 300-plus NCAA teams.
Yeah. It's fair. Ben, what's yours?
So mine is maybe a little controversial because there's only one name on there, but I picked the Wisconsin Badgers as my winner because for me, I think Wisconsin picked up the single most important player to their team. What I mean by that is the Badgers have desperately needed some sort of wing athleticism for years now, right? And AJ Storr brings exactly that. He's a lanky 6'6" wing, transferred in from St. John's. He shot 40% from three on 94 attempts, which is really great when you have a non-shooter like Tyler Wall, and it allows Chucky Hepburn to drive. He has a little bit more space there, gives Stephen Krause some more. Greg Gard needs this type of player to be able to succeed. He needs at least one of them. And I think this is a great way for him to succeed in this role. In addition, they've only lost one player, is Jordan Davis. It is a shame that he gets compared to Johnny Davis, who had this explosive rise. He's off to in Illinois State, so that's something to consider as well. But in terms of just pure addition, they didn't need much, but what they did need, they got, and that's why I picked them as a winner.
All right, and then we move on to the other side of the spectrum. Who did not really do well in the transfer portal? Who are our losers? And I'll start again. I'm going to go with Minnesota. Minnesota needed this to not happen badly. They went 9-22 last season. They needed something. 2-17 in the Big Ten, and their departures definitely outweighed their additions. Their additions were just two players from mid-major schools, 2 point guards, Elijah Hawkins from Howard and Mike Mitchell from Pepperdine, both with multiple years of eligibility, both double-digit scorers, but they'll slide into the starting lineup. They're not going to be all Big Ten top 3 team players. So they're just kind of like fillers in my opinion. But then let's talk about the subtractions. Small forward Jamison Battle off to Ohio State. He had 4 double-digit seasons, including 2 seasons of 17-plus points. There's Talon Cooper off to South Carolina. That's another experienced guy with 4 years of production, now spending a grad year in the SEC. And he averaged over 6 assists per game in 2023. So they lost their best scorer. They lost their best facilitator. Also, Jaden Henley off to DePaul. Also, Trayton Thompson off to Stetson. Those two not as significant, but Nebraska needed a good transfer portal, especially after, you lost Battle, you lost Cooper. Like, that's to be expected. Those are good players who want to go to better teams, and they went to Team Ohio State, South Carolina. Well, not great performing teams, but still teams that are in a little bit better shape, I would say, than Minnesota, a little bit more upside than Minnesota. You lost those two, okay, that's to be expected, perhaps, in this day and age, but they did not compensate with really like a overwhelming class of transfer portal additions. Ethan, you're up next.
All right, so I mentioned the class rating for the last one, saying that it's not my personal ranking. A big part of that is because my next transfer class, I believe, is the highest rated transfer class on this list, and it's still a loser for me. And that just because the situation that they're in, and I'm going to go with Penn State. So my reasoning for Penn State, obviously, they are coming off one of the best seasons in their basketball over the past in this millennium. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So Micah Shrewsbury has the success, says, I want more money. I'm going to Notre Dame. And respect for that. Money's important. Mike Rhodes comes in for VCU. And Mike Rhodes comes in, and he brings in Zach Hicks, who averaged 9.6 points at Temple. Leo O'Boyle, who averaged 11.6 at Lafayette, brings in Ace Baldwin, who averaged 12.7 with him, and Nick Kern, who averaged 5.3. Ace Baldwin was one of the best players in the country last year at the mid-major level, and also brings in Puff Johnson from North Carolina, who was a high energy piece for them, but couldn't really get a bunch of minutes with all the players that they continued to add. However, although they added many good players, in my opinion at least, they're coming off their best. Last year was their best recruitment year. And they're losing 2 freshmen to Ohio State and Notre Dame, and Kevin Jai and Evan Maffery. So, in losing 2 of your freshmen, one of which was a starter, Penn State's losing what they had, and they're having to do a complete reset, and that was my reasoning.
So, yeah, I would say it's not a great offseason for Penn State because of the coaching transaction, but it all depends how you look at it, because if we're looking at it independently of that and saying, okay, we know that they downgraded in coaches, however, they still were able to make use of the portal and add good players to replace the players that they lost, then that would be the way I would approach it more. And then I would put Penn State at probably a neutral, if anything, more of a winner. So it all depends. Definitely not a good offseason for them, but I guess we're kind of looking at it from different angles here.
Yeah, and for me, if I looked at it the same way that I did Nebraska, Penn State's arguably a tougher job than Nebraska. And the fact that Mike Rhodes was able to bring in Ace Baldwin and Puff Johnson and, Wahab. Now, Wahab's on his technically 3rd school, but 4th transfer, if you get what I'm saying. Like, that might be a little bit weird, and Hicks, too. I mean, those are pretty good players for Penn State, in my opinion.
They are. I'm just not sure how they're going to compare to the others.
Oh, no, I agree. I get that. Keba and Jai's a huge loss, in my opinion.
He was a top 3 or 5 recruit for them when he committed, in their history. So
crazy.
So, Ben, who did you have as your loser?
All right. I had Michigan just because Hunter Dickinson you cannot overstate the loss that is for the Wolverines, in my opinion. And if you look at the 2 people that I added up down below, Isaiah Barnes had a lot of potential. He's the prototypical size for a wing in college, and I think Tulsa actually got a steal here. He didn't do much during his 2 years at Michigan, but I think that was important. We didn't get to see any of Greg Glenn before he transferred off to Tulane. I believe he redshirted this year. But if you're looking at those 3 losses, those are pretty big considering what Michigan brings back. Let's look at Michigan's roster this year. If you look at any advanced metric, Torvik or whatever, I'm going off of Torvik, the 3 clear best players were Dickinson, Kobe Buffkin, and Jet Howard. And all 3 of them, presumably Buffkin as well, are gone either into the transfer portal or the draft. And who do they bring in? They bring in Caleb Love, arguably the most polarizing player on our on any of the transfer portal lists. They also bring in Namari Burnett, who's on his 3rd school in 3 years, which is slightly concerning to me. And then they also bring in Trey Jackson, who's a serviceable power forward from Seton Hall. I'm not sure where the production is coming from when we look at next year's roster for Michigan, and I don't think they did enough to find hoopers, if that makes sense. Like, just people that can put the ball in the basket. And that's something I'm really concerned about because, Caleb Love can put the ball in the basket, but he can also go 9 for 26, right? So which one are you going to get? And that's slightly concerning to me. So that's why I ultimately have them as a loser.
Yeah. Caleb Love could put the ball in the basket. Could he do it at an efficient rate? Well, we haven't really seen him do so consistently. So, yeah, I totally agree. I think the Caleb Love, it's very interesting what he will bring to that team. I think that actually leads us perfectly into what we'll talk about at the end, and that is our all Big Ten transfer team. And I have Caleb Love as my personal point guard, but like I was about to say, it's going to be very interesting. So first off, at UNC, he was just very frustrating to a lot of fans. First off, even after doing so well in that March Madness run, just his larger body of work was very inefficient shooting the ball too much, bad shot selection, bad decisions with the ball in his hands, and he was the leader of the offense. That's not good. Now he goes to a different coaching situation. Will he be more disciplined? Different environment? Michigan has some passionate fans, but maybe in the basketball department, slightly less vocal fans than UNC. I don't know. Maybe that'll take slightly less. Maybe that'll take slightly a slight amount of pressure off of him. But yeah, I have Caleb Love from UNC to Michigan as my point guard in my all Big Ten transfer team. That'll be really interesting. I also have AJ Storr going to Wisconsin. We talked about him, top 100 recruit that really provided sparks in his freshman season. I'm excited to see him potentially break out. Jamison Battle also talked about him. He's going from Minnesota to Ohio State. This one's a little interesting. We have not talked about this guy on this podcast yet, but Ben, let me know if I pronounce this right. Ben Krikke?
That's how I would guess, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's Ben Crick, I think.
Crick.
Ben Crick.
Okay. That's how I
okay.
heard it pronounced when I was working one of the games that he played in.
Okay. Well, he's going from Valparaiso to Iowa. He averaged a conference-leading 19.4 points per game in the Missouri Valley Conference, a grad transfer, so he's got a lot of experience, another year of eligibility. That's going to be a nice addition for Iowa. Like I said, he might not be the superstar best player in the Big Ten, but we've seen him produce enough. We know he's going to be a significant contributor. And then Khalil Ware, we talked about him. He's going from Oregon to Indiana. So that's my 5. I got Love, Storr, Battle, Crick, and Ware.
Ethan, what about you?
So I cannot put Caleb Love just because of all the rumors of him potentially saying I don't want to transfer to Michigan anymore. So I want to see how that were to play out. But currently, I'm gonna put Ace Baldwin as my point guard just because although I have Penn State as a loser, I think that he's going to be key if they were to have any success this year, which I have them finishing, I think, second or third to last in the Big Ten. So we'll see how that goes. But I have him as my point guard, Namari Burnett as my 2, Quincy Guerrier, the Syracuse to Oregon to now Illinois as my 3/4. And then I'm going to put Rink Mast as my 4 and Khalil Ware as my 5.
Got it. And mine's going to be sort of a mix of the both of yours. I'm going to go with Ace Baldwin at my point. We will take Khalil Ware at the 5, Jamison Battle at the 3. Why am I blanking on my 2 right now? I'm so sorry. That you both had it. Oh my goodness.
AJ Storr.
AJ Storr, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I had to include my winner in Wisconsin. And for my 4, I'm going to put down Evan Mahaffey transferring. I know it's an in-conference transfer, but I do really think he has a lot of potential going to Ohio State. And I really liked what I saw during his freshman year. So I like that transfer for the Buckeyes there. So for me, it's Storr, Baldwin, Mahaffey, Battle, Ware.
Got you. All right. And that will do it for today's edition of the CB Review Studio podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe to our show. We are trying to continue to grow here as we do more podcasting here for CB Review as the site has continued to grow for several years, and we're trying to coincide that with the YouTube channel. So please subscribe if you like our content. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And take care.